I don't know if it's useful to do that, but you can. So again, just double-clicking on the shapefile, which opens up the layer properties, going to symbology. And it's here that you'll be doing most of your work. And we just picked categories because we want to assign a color to each of the different districts. So at first, none of these are appearing. If you don't see anything show up, you just add all values and you click OK. And you can change your color ramp if you want to. There's a bunch of color ramps. You can mess with these. Color ramps that are a single color are no good in this instance because it's too hard to distinguish them. So you can't color ramps. So when you get to actually analyzing data, you'll be doing quantities. And they'll be probably using graduated colors. And I'll go through an example of that in a minute. And so I'm just going to cancel this. All right, so this just colors the map. But if you decide that you want to work on a particular area of the city, and you should create a map that shows some feature for the entire city, and then call out a neighborhood, for instance. So if you want to call out just one neighborhood, you can do it a couple of ways. Because there are not many census tracts involved, you could just use the little selection tool up here. It says selection features. Right? You can select different ways. You can draw a circle, it'll select everything in the circle. You can take a lasso, all that stuff. Oops. So you can actually click on things to select them if you want. Do it manually. So.
Where'd you go? You went to select by polygon?
Yeah. So now, and I just went, yeah. So but see now it's selecting from the top layer, right? It'll always select from the top layer. And we don't want to select the planning district, we want census tracts. So remember, you want to make sure that you can select these things. So go up to selection, select selection options. Oh, sorry, selection options. So somewhere it should tell you.
What about select by location?
Yeah, we're not going to do that right now. Oh, that's right. We have to. Sorry, we have to add. We have to do this customized process.
Professor,
Yeah.
I've somehow minimized or eliminated my table of contents. How do I bring that back up?
Over here.
Yeah. Do you know where it may have gone?
Space, man.
Maybe in Windows?
Maybe under Windows. Table contents.
Thank you.
So remember, we have to customize our menu. This one thing needs to be done, and we're doing customize mode. And we want to add a command. And don't ask me why they choose to do it this way. I cannot explain to you the thinking behind this. We want to scroll down to selections. There's selection. And over here in the commands, we have to add set selectable layers. Right? So click on that, you actually literally hold down your mouse button, and you drag it over to the selection menu. And you drop it in. And so now you have a new command, or you should do. I didn't add it. Oh, see, it actually I didn't do it right. It actually added it to the menu instead of the selection menu. That's very peculiar. All right. So when you do it right, and you click on it, it tells you which of these layers you can select. And so because I don't want to deal with selecting planning districts, I'm going to unselect it. Check it off. I can no longer select it. So now when I pick the selection tool, the only selectable layer that I've got going right now is the census tracts. So if I click on something on the map, it knows that I'm looking for census tracts, not planning districts.
You just dragged selection up to selection?
Yeah, so no, I didn't do it right. So it's up there instead. See, it should have been inserted here, but I didn't nail it.
You would put it on
So I put it
selection?
actually on the top level menu, and you should just drop it into the selection menu. So again, the process is you click on customize, you go to customize mode, you want to add a new command, and that command is part of the selection set of commands. Click on it, and then down here is set selectable layers. And you just literally click on it and drag it, and I should have made sure this menu popped up, and then you just drop it somewhere in this menu. And so it sets it there. So,
I did that.
and once you've got that on there, you can turn off the layers, on and off what layers are selectable. So just makes it a little easier to manage things. So anyway, now that that's done, I can hold down, make sure I'm in select mode, and I can hold down the shift key, and I can manually select all the tracks that I want. If you want to do it that way, you could. Right? And then you've got a selection here, and if you have the attribute table open, let me just open that up. The selected layers will show up; they'll be highlighted in your table. And you can, if you want to, click on the little button down here, and it just shows the records you selected. Just toggles them on and off. So now you know what you selected.
And you're going by what you do, select by rectangle or select by?
The default. Select features by rectangle. Now, the other way to do this, say you want to select a bigger area, or say you have you can imagine it would be useful if you have many, many, many polygons you want to pick. That doing this by hand might be a pain. So the other way to make a selection like this, when you know that there's a feature, there's a field in your table that you can work with, is you can do select by attributes. Right? An attribute is essentially some characteristic of the data you have in your database. And so in this case, the district is an attribute. So if you select by attributes, this is when you can enter into these little formulas. And you have to be very particular with the grammar. It doesn't like it when you don't do things well. And we're hoping you have to make sure that you're picking from the right layer. We want San Francisco census tracts. And we want to create a new selection. You can add to existing selections. If you started selecting one neighborhood, you decide you want to add another neighborhood, you can add instead of create a new one. Anyway, we're going to create a new selection. You scroll down to our planning district field. And you can also here tell it to put in all the values that are available for you, just so you can pick from them. And it will put all the different values. Now you wouldn't want to do this with the actual data, like population, because then it would put 176 different numbers in there. That's not useful. So the way you would do this is, say you're interested in the first two districts, and you want to call them out, select them. Just say, double click on planning districts, equals Vernal Heights, and
how did you get on the right hand side? How did you get that? Yeah.
by clicking get unique values. So it pulls all the different options for the field. And remember equals and planning district equals Buena Vista. Now I don't remember if I got the grammar right. I haven't done this in a while. We'll see. Nothing has happened. Select by attributes. All right, so I'm going to just try a 1 for now. Make sure it's all right there. So it just highlighted immediately. It highlighted the Bernal Heights district. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to clear all the selected features. I'm going to see if I can do 2 now. Select my attributes. It's already started that one, so I'm going to say and. So I think if I add just the other district, it doesn't like it. I'll add, say, Buena Vista. Yeah, see, it doesn't like the way that grammar works. So you have to repeat the whole phrase again. So, and planning district equals Buena Vista. And I'm being mocked.
Is it something to do with the and? Like, is the and supposed to be touching the?
Yeah, I mean, it could be there's a space that shouldn't be there. Oh, I know why. Should be or. Because otherwise, it's looking for a designation that would be 2 things instead of either or. There it is. Got to know your logical, operators. Because it was looking for the reason that was not working is because it's looking for a census tract that is both in Buena Vista and in Bernal Heights. You don't want that. You want either or. So now you've got an area. That's separated. Oh, you say, oh, shoot, maybe I should just look at the central section of San Francisco. You want to add one more census tract, you can go back to your selection, select by attributes, and instead of creating a new selection, say add to the current selection. So you clear out your phrase, and let's say this time we're gonna add that district to Greenland, which is probably I think it's central. Central, yeah. So planning district equals central, apply. There's an extra, really clicky. All right. So now I've selected 3 different regions, 3 different planning districts, and say you want to work with this geography. What you can do is you can save the selection as a new layer and add it to your map, right? So you can pull it out. So all you have to do is right-click on the shapefile you're working on and select selection. And then go over to create layer from selected features. So you select it and adds it to pops it up over here. And notice it's colored it purple. So you can turn everything else off, for instance, and you can see now you just have this. And when you have it, you also have, you open up the attribute table, you should always check, you also have all the data. It's all there. But now it's just for that one little section.
Can you go through that process just real quick one more time?
Yeah. So I'll do it now, but I'll remove this. I'm just going to remove it. So back here. So it's maintain the selection, right? So you just right-click on the shapefile you're working on. Go down to selection and create a layer from the selected features. Select it, and it automatically pops it up and assigns it a color. This time it did green instead of mauve. So you can change the color if it's not especially standing out for you. I'll do the biohazard overlay. Biohazard overlay color. Well, there's a lot of UCF labs in the neighborhood down here. 3-legged frogs are hopping through the central waterfront now. So this is now a layer that you can work with. And if you go over to, if you go into layout mode, it shows up. It's a different layer. And it's remember, it's a live connection. Now, if you wanted to have an inset map where you focused on this neighborhood and you just wanted to have San Francisco as a sort of a small orientation map. Okay, so what you can do, go back to your map view, and you can insert a new data frame down here. You can take the layer you've just created, and you can copy it, and then you can paste it down to the new data frame. And I have a copy of it, and this is what you're looking at. Now, you have to activate. Remember, if you have different data frames, you have to activate them. They're not going to be both active at the same time. So that's why it's only showing this one. Right? If you want to go back to your original one, you have to right-click on it, and you have to go activate it. So I have to activate it. So I'm just going to go back.
And how did you paste it down there? You just
Literally, copy and paste. Right-click on it, right-click on it, copy it, and then click on the new data frame, right-click, and paste. Like you copy and paste anything. So now, if I don't want this here anymore, I can turn it off. And I'm back to my little map of San Francisco. So let's say I want to organize this into a map. I'm going to unselect all that stuff too, so it's not showing up. I'm going to go to my layout mode. So it's got both here now, right? It's showing both these data frames. So this is very tiny right now, and this is very big. We want to do the opposite. So basically, make sure you're
How did you get back to your main map?
back here, these two little buttons.
Okay.
This is what cycles you from the main map to the layout map. And then you can start mucking around with these. And you don't want this to be big. So I'm going to make sure that, remember, if you use the layout zooms, you're only zooming in the layout. You're only working with the layout. You're not affecting that link between the two. So you can use this, you can pan it around. If I go up here and select the little shrink, the zoom out button, and I click on it, then it actually zooms it out.
Why is this one?
Because it's actually making that change in the data. So up here, this actually affects the data view, and therefore it affects what's shown in the map, or layout. So now I'm getting my little San Francisco map's getting smaller. I can shrink it up a little bit more. A little bit more. Right. So then I can take my other map. And I can make it bigger. Just by zooming, that's too big. Just by zooming in. You have to muck around with get the idea. So now I have my biohazard area map is the prominent feature, and then you can insert a graphic that has a line if you want to. So you've got what's essentially an inset map. You've got the San Francisco map as an orientation, and you've got the neighborhood you're interested in as the big map. So it's just a matter of playing around with these things and zooming it out, and just understanding that there are two different sets of tools for zooming. One just affects the layout. One actually affects the data view that you're working with. So for instance, if I pick the zoom out button in layout, it's just making the layout smaller. I'm just clicking now. It has nothing to do with, it does not change the perspective view. It just allows you to work in the layout mode. But if I use the zoom out tool over here, it starts to affect what you're actually seeing here, because it's really affecting this. Right? So if I start going smaller, and I make this, I'm just clicking again and again, clicking, 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 clicking. And if I go back to layout, it's made it small again. So what you do in data view shows up in layout mode. You're using the tools up here. Now remember to keep saving your project, because these things will tend to crash. So, but for now, I'm going to get rid of that one. I deleted the data frame over here. Just actually, it wiped it out. So let's go back to this map. And now I want to, instead of working with neighborhood districts, of course, what you want to do is work with the data to create a true thematic map. So, and you can, if you want to, you can save this as a layer, what you've done here, by saving it as layer files. Right? So if you like that map, and you give it a name, and you'll name it, save it to your flash drive or wherever you're storing all your GIS stuff. Right? You do that, and I can't get it on my flash drive, so I can't save it anywhere right now. If you save it, you don't have to go back and make this map again. It'll show up over here as another layer, okay? And it will keep it, and you'll give it a name. And it'll have the extension layer. So it doesn't actually have any data with it. It just remembers what you did to the map. So imagine you can keep this work. You don't have to lose the map, you don't have to lose what you've done. So I'm going to now change this, and we're going to go back to properties and the symbology. Now we're going to actually work with some of the data. We want to go to quantities. So a thematic map, of course, is showing some information about some data. So again, it's not showing us any of the fields yet, right? So you get to pick what you want. And if I just look at straight population, that's an easy one to work with. So I'm just going to choose population. Remember, it gives you a default set of ranges. Natural breaks tends to be the best. You might want to change these labels because they don't look that great. So you might want to change this to be 0 to 2,000, and then 2,000 to 3,500, whatever you think looks nice. I'm not going to go through that process now, but you literally just type in a new label. And you click apply in this case. And it's created a map. And here's the population ranges over here. You can see how it changed the yellow to the label that I gave it. And this is a map that shows you straight population by census tract. And you might like this map. And you can save this as a layer, and it will add it to the table of contents over here. So it's really quite easy to create a very basic thematic map just by applying a range to the data and having it count and display the census tracts that way. So you want whenever you change analysis, it's going to replace it. That's the advantage of saving it as a layer. Right? So again, before I do this, if I've done a map like this and I want to keep that because I want to print it out for later purposes, right-click on the shapefile and then you save it as a layer file. And it will save this and add it to your table of contents over here. Because as you'll see now, if I decide I want to do another analysis, instead of looking at population, I want to look at number of people who are. I want to look at median family incomes. Click on this. So now it has a range of median family income, the lowest being at 15,000. Now here you might want to have different ranges. You might not want it to be natural breaks. You play around with things, see how it looks. Maybe I want to have only 4 categories. It will shrink the ranges. If I want to have 3 categories even, shrink them. If I got a lower income, middle income, and high income, that might be something I want to do. So I might want to change the label here to low income. And then middle, medium income. High income. Now, that might not be the best thing to do if you're not giving anyone any sense of what the ranges are, but just for the sake of doing it, click OK. So now I've got a map. And you can see how it's changed the label over here. So when you create your key, that's what will show up when you add the the key to the map. And I got a map showing where the lowest incomes are, where medium income family incomes are, and where the highest family incomes are. And it's no surprise.
Look at that disparity on Petrera.
Oh yeah, right here.
That's a trip.
Up on the hill. And it's interesting that most of the major hills have higher income. And then down by the waterfront for all the new condo development in South of Market. It's actually a pretty interesting little map. So let's say that I like this one, and I want to use it, print it out. So I'm going to go to my layout mode. See now it's small here. I want to make sure it does a better job of filling the page. So I'm using the tools from the data mode. I'm just going to zoom in. I want change I'm just clicking on the zooming tools and moving in and out. I'm not doing anything particular. The arrow is always the default select thing. So I could probably fit bigger on the page, so I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. That's filling the page quite nicely. I'm just going to pan it around a bit. I don't really care if Carolines are showing anything like that. Okay, so that's all right. It's looking okay. So now remember, when you want to have a map, you have to have all the right pieces. Right? So you need to give it a title. Click on a title. You could say SFP, or you could say family income by census, or whatever title you want to give it. Title. It defaults it up here. You can move it around.
What is that little low income island out in Richmond?
Down here.
No, up
Up here.
Yeah, I wonder what neighborhood is that?
There used to be housing projects there. And then you're just inserting features now. We've already gone through this. So the legend, I'll insert the legend now. And I'm going to do it it gives you the choice which legend you want to do, because you've got multiple layers here. And I want to make sure it's census tracts. Next. You can change. It's all about customizing, tweaking. I mean, it's up to you. Playing around with it might be useful. So now here's my default legend. So yeah, it's taken the labels that I gave it before and applied it to them. Now if you don't like what that reads, you can change the name of your layer too. So it's something different. You can also change this so it shows it differently here.
Can you go over briefly how to stick that legend in there again?
That's all of the things that you'll be doing to create your maps. Almost all of them come from just using the insert menu item. So, and I inserted a title, and then I inserted the legend.
And if those words aren't highlighted,
You need the choices. Then yeah. I can come around later to figure out one. You got it?
Yeah.
And then also you need your north arrow. So just inserting whatever north arrow you think looks groovy. I think there's a little north like a north. Alright, so pick north. Wherever you think it looks aesthetic. And then a scale bar. And I like the bars, not the text. And remember, if for some reason it doesn't show up, it's because you need to tell it that it needs to be in feet or something. So one thing to do is click on properties, and you can change the number of divisions and subdivisions, how many ticks there are on it. And recognize that it's in feet. I don't want it to actually show in feet, though. I want to show it in miles. So change it to miles. And then I hit apply. And okay. And okay. And then there's your little scale bar. And there you have a map. It's pretty groovy. It's not that hard to do. I said groovy twice now, haven't I? That's not good. So now the trick is to get this to print this out. To actually produce the map that you're happy with. You have to export it. So you go up to File and Export. And for a while, ESRI had the crappiest algorithms for exporting. And you were limited, very limited in the kinds of file formats that would allow you to export as. But now there's a little bit more. You have some bigger, better choices. I would recommend TIFF files or a JPEG, depending on what you want. But TIFFs tend to look a little better, but they're a little bigger. So export it as a TIFF file, and you tell it where to save it. And you might want to check the resolution. You might want it to be, depending on if you're printing it out, you might want more than 96 dpi. So you might want to crank this up to 200 or something. So then you'll save it, and it's a map you can print out in any program that allows you to read a TIFF file. Right. Does anyone, you all know about IrfanView? Anyone here know? Raise your hand. Anyone here heard of IrfanView? All right. So I recommend, if you're I don't know if it's available for the Mac platform, but IrfanView is probably the single best image viewer and basic image manipulator on the internet, and it is free. It's called IrfanView. I suggest you download it because it will allow you to view any kind of graphic file and manipulate it and print them out.
Irfan with an F?
Irfan, IrfanView. So I'll show you. It's a fabulous program. It's written by a guy, I think he's in Austria, and he's just by himself, and apparently he's had lots of marriage requests because the software is so great. He actually thanks the people that are sending emails saying they'd like to marry him. So
if we go far in our pursuits in intellect, then we're going to have suitors after us?
That's right. So if you just search Google IrfanView, all one word, and you'll see here's IrfanView. So it's a really super easy way. Instead of like opening up Word and cutting and pasting things, you just download IrfanView, and it's a little program that allows you to not just display almost any kind of graphic file, no matter what the extension, but also to make basic adjustments. You can crop, you can cut, you can rotate, you can change exposure, you can do all kinds of things with it. It's super, and it's free. So I highly recommend getting a copy. I can't live without it. And it allows you to resize it and resample your images. So if you ever decide that you want to do a presentation on PowerPoint and you're working and you want to show a map that you've created in GIS, and the map, especially if you save it as a TIFF file, can be very large. You just open it up in IrfanView and resample it, and it makes it nice and small, and you pop it into PowerPoint, and you don't have a giant PowerPoint that's 50 megabytes big. So very useful. Because you can have it save it at default resolutions, like 800 by 600 or whatever. And if you want to send an image to a friend, a photograph you've taken, just open it up in IrfanView, size it for the web, and attach it to email. It's an awesome program. Okay, so that is the basic process. And I'll go through some more tips and tricks as we get a little closer, or go over the next week or two. But that's basically the process for working with the data. Now, this is a nice, straightforward, simple map, but it may be that you wanted to show on top of this, for instance, what the planning districts are. So if you click on planning districts, they show up. And you can label them. That's one thing we haven't done. Now, let me go back to labeling. I did mention labeling is a pain in this program. So this is just the planning districts. You want to just label the planning districts. Right-click on the shapefile. You can go to Label Features. And it will pop up, automatically will label the feature. So in this case, it's added the names of all your districts. You can actually go through a more customized process if you want. And then if you want to work with them, though, you have to when I actually move them around. See, I can't click on them. I'm trying to click on them and it doesn't do anything. So you have to actually turn them into graphic elements, which is done, I remember in this new version, it's done somewhere slightly differently. I'll have to remember where you convert them. Somewhere in this menuing system it allows you to, they used to have a graphics. Well, I'll have to get back to you on, I don't remember. But what the process typically, because the menus, items, and so on, they're changed in this version. Basically, you have to convert these to graphics. Right now, they're just nothing. You can't interact with them. But there's a way to convert them into graphic elements that you can then change the font size or move them around. And it's just a matter of me relocating where that is. But I think that's enough information overload for the day. So if I were you, I would just start getting your hands dirty and using the data that we've got there, that 2000 data just to work with. And then I'll make sure that it's added to the network, the newer data.
Yeah, will you send me a...